In this video, we are going to create a simple error handler, which will give us a nice and easy interface to dispatch events to the TopDialog and show the messages from whichever component we want to. Under the core directory, let's create a new JavaScript files. It's going to be called error handler. And from here, we're going to export default class called error handler. Our error handler will have two static methods. First one will be called showError, and it will take two arguments. First one will be the error, and the other will be before callback. By default, the second one will be set to null. Now we will check first if type of before callback is function. If it's a function, what we want to do is just call it. So before callback with a set of brackets and semicolon. After this, we will check if our error has a property response, and if this response property has a property data. And if it does, then we are going to use error handler. We need to use a class name again because we're using static methods. We will call the method called error dialog, and it will take our error message. So error response data, and the data will contain our message in this case, and then we simply return to make sure that the execution of this method is terminated. Then we're going to check for another scenario. If error has a message property, then we're going to do exactly the same thing, but rather than response data message, we will just pass through error message. Otherwise, we simply log our error to the console. So console log error. Now let's create this error dialog method. Static error dialog method. It will take a message and some sort of ID. By default, we are going to set to request failure. And what we're going to do here is simply use our event bus to dispatch method, dispatch the event. So fire top warning. The errors will always be on this red background. So top warning type for this dialog, and with the ID, which is the second argument, so ID, and then we pass message as a message. Now, because the properties and values that we're associating with these properties match the naming, which means that my message is message, ID is ID, we can shorten this a little bit and just put it on one line, so we don't have to actually use the assignment for this, the colon. We can just put the variables directly in and it will equal to exactly the same thing. So let's save and close our error handler now. The next thing we need to do is open our Bootstrap and let's register our error handler. So we are going to import error handler from, we go on source, core and error handler. And now we are going to register it as a global error handler on the window object. So error handler equals, and it's going to be just error handler. It's a static. It's all of the methods are static. There is no constructor, so we can register it like this. Okay, now if we save it and close it, the next thing we can do is now go to our components, open our form wrapper, and let's go to our call failed method. And what we are going to do from within this method is use this error handler and then call show error method, passing the error as an argument. So if we now save it and let's recompile all the assets, so npm run dev. Once everything has recompiled, let's go to the browser, refresh the page, hit submit with empty fields, and there we go. Our dialog is showing right at the top. After 7 seconds, it should disappear. So there we go. And if we put another invalid input, a different message will show up above the field, but the top will show the same message, obviously. And there we go. If we click on it, it disappears. And just to show you where this is actually coming from, if we open our validator and validator class, you'll see that what happens when we actually validate the input, we are rejecting with a given message. This was the message that actually was shown in the dialog. When we reject it, then the catch method will catch the error that's been rejected, and this will then be rejected further up with the object and the message index which contains this error message. Now going back to our event handler, this is the scenario which is actually going to work for this particular case, because we're going to have error with the message index. Now, this first one will be used with the AJAX calls. When we are going to be using Axios to make the call to the server and then the response going to be received, we're going to have it in a following format. It's going to have error, response, data. Within data will be anything that we actually send from the PHP code or any other server-side code back to the JavaScript. So the message will be one of the indexes that I'm going to send back from within the method of a given controller.